Scene 7. We gotta find the Technodrome, but we're already inside of it. Turtles, you're dumb. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. In the last part, we saved Splinter after he randomly got kidnapped. And now we're in the final stage of the game, the Technodrome, which is the hardest stage in the game, bar none. Partially due to the amount of enemies in it, partially just due to the length of it. We are here for the entire part, barring the credit sequence. They throw almost everything, if not every enemy variety in the game here at you, as well as almost every single stage hazard we've seen. So you're in here for the long haul, but any good news that can come out of that is that you might get a 1-up out of it along the way. Just because there are so many enemies here. One thing I don't think I've exactly talked about, though, I think I have died at least once this LP thus far, I think, is that this works like quite a few other beat-em-ups in that when you die, you respawn on screen and you're invisible for a while. It's not like other games where you go back to a checkpoint, or some other beat-em-ups like Streets of Rage where you drop back into the screen and enemies get stunned for a bit. You're just outright there. Also, insert joke about getting frozen here. Those things are a bit annoying, though, in that unlike the freezing things in TMNT 4, which they were certain platforms, those little turrets follow you. They try to stay at your exact altitude. So try to vary up where you are depth-wise in the stage at that point. Otherwise, you're probably going to get hit, and that does some decent damage, so yeah, don't. I'm torn between saying this stage would be easier with 2 players and harder because, again, the amount of enemies gets upped on hard mode to make up for the second player. But at the same time, having that second player means your survivability is still increased. Also, I didn't mention it when these enemies showed up, but they're very weak to the little special attack because if you start it when they're getting up, you're likely going to hit them when they're fully standing up. Their projectiles, on the other hand, are really annoying. Also, I brought it up a part ago, at least I think it was last part, maybe 2 parts ago. But again, another gray stage. The game could have used a little bit more color, but I understand why it's like that. Again, just to make your characters and the enemies pop out a bit more. It's just a bit bland after a bit. But I don't mean like the floor. I don't mind the floor being gray. What I would have liked is maybe a bit more color in the backgrounds. And they did do that to an extent. We've had some reds, some blues, so on and so forth, but you know. Again, make sure you take care of these weird turret things because they count for the kill count. So if you're getting close to 1-up, these could be the ones you need. Unlike certain other stages in the series, though, you don't really have much to worry about in this stage in terms of major threats from enemies because there's no, like, boss rush like some other beat-em-ups had or any unexpected surprises along the way. There's only one section that's a little bit different from the rest, and that's just because every game of this type needs that, and even then it's pretty vanilla compared to other variations of itself. Which I guess in a way kind of describes the game now that I think about it. Good, but very vanilla for a beat 'em up. I'll talk more about my thoughts on it when it comes to the credits, but still. Also, something I wish every beat 'em up did that is absent in this game, in that I think area hazards like the lasers should also damage the enemies. Some games have done that, but a sad amount of beat 'em ups do not, and that's slightly irritating to me. This is where you really need to fear these weird little cold spray things, because they have a lot of them, and they respawn really quickly, so you just kind of want to tiptoe your way across this. Jump kick's also pretty good for getting past that, just because you can, you know, dash past things. And like I said earlier, it's not a beat 'em up without an elevator sequence. Though we're not facing enemies in this elevator sequence, we're just dodging the weird bowling balls from stage 1 that we haven't seen in a while. Random, but I'll take it. It's also over pretty quickly, too. Potentially one of the fastest elevator sequences I've seen in a beat-em-up. Guys, we're already done. This is also one of the few stages where they try to put a couple of pizzas in there for you, just because there's so much in your way. But you know what? That's nice. I'll take it. Now, something I find a bit odd is that if I'm recalling correctly, the manual has Stone Warriors listed as an enemy, but I don't think I can recall a single one we fought throughout the game, from the top of my head at least, barring Granitor just because he's the leader of them. I'm assuming that's something I put in there just to be like, whoa, did you know that the Stone Warriors are in the game somewhere, or something like that? It's weird. Oh, hey, Rod Kilrodney's, you're back. This last little section, because we're almost done with the actual stage section of the final stage, is very spam happy with enemies, which I know, spam happy with enemies in a beat 'em up, never. But I more mean the required encounters that the screen locks for are very close together in proximity, even compared to some of the other things we've done thus far in the stage and game. At the same time, though, honestly, when it comes to the main stage here, if you've gotten this far, you don't have to worry about too much, because you know the mechanics by this point. You know how everything jumps and everything works. And that's the thing with beat 'em ups, even if you haven't played one in a while, and you pick one up. You might start off a bit bad, but by endgame, you know what you're doing, even if the game likes to throw too much at you and overwhelm you. In fact, I've noticed over here, that's where a lot of the difficulty in beat 'em ups comes from. If it's not bosses having really hard to dodge attacks, it's a big spam of enemies who do a lot of damage. Thankfully, though, from my memory, this game does not have a hard mode, which, in a way, kind of rare for beat 'em up, because beat 'em ups are usually like one of the biggest fans of higher difficulties. Just like, you got like stuff like Maniac mode or Mania mode, depending on the game, where there's so many enemies and they do obscene damage and such. For a game like this, not having that's kind of weird in a way, now that I think about it. Because, like, one of the most famous ones I can think of is the hardest difficulty on TMNT 4, where a lot of foot soldiers are replaced by the pink ones, especially in the Shredder fight in that one. Which totally doesn't make the game really annoying, especially with the amount they spawn. But with that, we're now at the endgame boss rush of sorts. It's not a real boss rush. We got, I think this is supposed to be Trag, who fires missiles and has the usual counter slap. Like with most bosses, though, very susceptible to the jump kick spam of doom. I think what makes this guy particularly very susceptible to it is his large size partnered with very very slow attack speed. Like, his counter slap doesn't have as much range as usual, and he takes a bit to fire his gun, because he has to pump it up to make the rocket go and such first. You got some time with this one. The special attack probably could be useful here as well, just given you can get, like, directly above him depth-wise and use it then to easily avoid his attacks. But at this point, it's a case of dominant strategy, really, when it comes to the jump kick, because it's the most effective way to dodge attacks while also doing damage. And given the game's relatively low combat options, it's really the only choice you have for a lot of things. Because if you try to use the special attack or the 1-2 combo, you're just going to be taking a lot of damage really quickly. And that can be annoying to a lot of people. And with that, time for us to head into the final room of the game. And who was in it? But Krang! Once a warlord of alien planets, cried fight side by side with Shredder in Scene 7. He is the second to last boss in the game with a theme that is way too jolly for its own good. Krang, though, is one of the hardest bosses in the game. Yeah, first off, he's the healthiest boss. I think he has the most HP out of anything. And his two attacks are to shoot eye lasers, which have pretty quick wind-up. And his counter slap is a kick that has very little wind-up to it. Very likely he'll use it and you'll already be hit by it before you know what happened. And you'll know you'll get hit by it because you'll get knocked all the way around. As usual, though, jump kick spam is the way to victory here. You're gonna be here for a bit, though, because it has so much HP. You know, though, it's an upgrade from TMNT 1 where, if I'm recalling correctly, do you fight Krang at all in that game? I don't recall us having to. Because we go right from the Technodrome, we go into the Technodrome in that one, then you fight Shredder at the end of that really long, annoying hallway. You know what? It's an upgrade. He also has that attack, which he rarely ever gets a chance to do. That's his projectile attack from long range, but he seldom gets to do it. Partially because he's spamming either his counter kick or his eye lasers because I'm so close to him. I want to say he has maybe twice the health of any boss we've fought thus far, barring maybe one. It's pretty absurd, but thankfully, again, this jump kick spam is just really, really useful. Given this, though, he manages to get a kill on me, which isn't too common. I also get to use some special attack spam there just to get some extra damage on him. Again, if you get killed, use your invincibility frames to your advantage, because that's going to be how you get some really good damage in there. I'm trying to remember, though, if this song is based off something from the show, but I can't recall much of that show's soundtrack. I won't be surprised if it is, and it's suitably goofy for essentially who is a big joke character, but at the same time, kind of non-threatening for a second-to-last boss theme. Oh, hi. I'm invincible. Okay, then. But now it's time for the true final boss against Shredder. And this fight's a bit different than most, because there's two Shredders. One of them is fake. They both have the same attacks, though. They can attack with their swords, and that's about it for close range. And they do have one long-range attack, where one of them goes to the edge of a screen, and then fires a giant ray, a mutagen ray like that. And if you get touched by that, I believe it's instant kill. As you can see, I have now made one lose his helmet, the one on the left. The one that loses its helmet after only a few attacks is a fake Shredder who will be respawned upon defeat. Essentially, it's just there to be annoying. When you destroy the helmet of one, try to focus on the other. However, at the same time, jump kick spam means you'll probably be hitting them both, so you're going to go through a few clones. It's not like some games where maybe making a clone to be annoying to you makes them lose a bit, Shredder lose a bit of health. He's just outright the same. Shredder has a lot of health, but not as much as Krang, to note. The big thing is that since you have two targets, you might just feel like you're hitting him more when it's just the other one absorbing some hits for him. The real Shredder eventually loses his helmet as well, but that's only when he's really low on HP. Just continue this trend. If one Shredder goes towards the exact side of a screen, try to get below or above him, wherever the case applies, and you should be safe from the instant kill attack, and at that point, you should be good with the boss fight in general. Not too much to fear from this. Just, I guess, be forewarned of how quickly he can pull out his attacks. Like, there was no warning he was going to do the mutagen attack there. And his sword strikes can be fast. Thankfully, though, they don't really knock you around too much. You can move right after getting hit. I believe that's the real Shredder who's lost his helmet at this point. No, I'm wrong. Even playing this can be, watching this can be a bit hard to tell which one's which. Just hit them both and you should kill them both eventually. Notably though, when the real Shredder loses his helmet, he can no longer spawn clones. So use that to your advantage. At that point though, he's so low on health that you're not going to really be needing to attack him much more anyway. It's especially good when you can get him into a combo against the wall like that. That was really nice. And we'll continue it. You know, jump kicking everything to death is anime as all hell, but you know, well, I said that you know twice there. It's really satisfying when you get it off. Freaked the Foots, mangled the Mousers, and totaled the Technodrome. That's turtle power! But what about the Shredder and Krang? Burnt to toast? Vaporized to milkshake? Or escaped to Dimension X? Until we know, none of us can sleep safely in our beds. Shells. Well, that was a completely lackluster ending. But we at least get a cool little credit sequence here in the city. And that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. It's better than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, the one with the dam level, but I don't think it's a very good beat-em-up by modern standards. The enemy variety isn't too bad, but at the same time it gets visually boring after a while. So does the real rest of the game with how much gray there is, even though I understand why it's so gray. The music is kick-ass though, and for what it is, it's a fun little simple beat-em-up. I'd just say play 3 or 4 over this any day, really. And if you're gonna play the game, I actually recommend using the 10 lives cheat code just so you don't have to worry as much about your life total. Because admittedly, the 2 lives and 3 continues for a game like this is kind of strict. But at the same time, it's an NES game. I expected that was just so they could try and lengthen the difficulty. Lengthen it by difficulty, rather. If you want to play it, I think it was only ever on NES. I don't think this ever got a virtual console release. And of course, there is the arcade version, which I'm assuming is the version you should play anyway, because it's probably technologically better. And I believe the arcade version is available on the PS2 through one of the other, as an unlockable one of the other Turtles games, Xbox do the same thing, and GameCube, as well as Xbox Live Arcade. I think the NES version was also on some other things like the Amiga, the Commodore 64, and I think DOS, but let's be real, they're probably about the same in quality as this one, so not the most worth it, but I guess it's there. Some other versions also include more players, like you can have up to 4, I think. Which, you know what, I can see this making for a fun time with 4 people, just bullshitting and laughing around and such. It's, I guess, is one of the best parts of beat 'em ups, just playing it with friends. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then. Ha! 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 Ha!